Needless Things Podcast. Hey, Phantomaniacs! Welcome to the newest episode of the Needless Things Podcast, where we talk about toys, movies, music, and all manner of pop culture dorkery. I am your host, Dave, and I am on vacation. So, I really haven't been on the internet at all, and it's been really nice. Now, I've been doing some social media stuff, like sharing the all-new YouTube video reviews of... Oh, gosh, what are they? Oh, Beachhead. I put up a poll in the Needless Things Podcast Facebook group, which you should join if you haven't, although you have to answer the 3 questions. They're very simple questions, but they're gauging how well you can compose yourself in a social media-based group. You have to answer those questions, and if you don't, then I'm going to delete your request. I give people like 2 weeks or something, and I'll send them a message saying, hey, you should answer these questions. And in response to that, from one, I got a question mark. So, but yeah, you got to answer them. They're very simple. But join the group, and it's basically making sure you can be nice and not talk about politics and respect other people's opinions, and also... help us out and figure out who would win in a fight between Lemmy and God. That's it. Very easy. So anyway, I put a poll up to see if the Needless Things Podcast Facebook group would rather I post a review of the new G.I. Joe Classified Special Missions Cobra Island Beachhead or the new Amazon exclusive G.I. Joe Classified Arctic Mission Storm Shadow. Beachhead won by a landslide, so Beachhead was posted on Wednesday. This past Monday, gosh, what did I even post Monday? Was it Baroness? I think Baroness was Monday, but it might have been something else. You know what? If you want to find out, you need to go to the Needless Things YouTube channel and check out the reviews. Next week, Storm Shadow will go up, and I have already set Monday's review, which is the NECA Super Shredder from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 Secret of the Ooze. And I'd just like to say, I think toys, titles, names are entirely too long now. Especially when you throw exclusive in there, because Walmart exclusive Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 The Secret of the Ooze Super Shredder from NECA. That is way too many words just to describe one action figure. I miss the days when it would have just been Super Shredder. But that's okay, because it's a great figure, and you can see my review of it on the Needless Things YouTube channel. So anyway, I've been enjoying my time not being at work and hanging out with my family and down here in the Phantom Zone. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, and probably last week as well, that I have shifted everything on the back wall of the Phantom Zone over and created about 6 feet of new space. And I have moved my 25th anniversary G.I. Joe collection over about 6 feet. And I am going to be filling in this 4 feet there's technically 6 feet of new space, but 2 of it's already filled. 4 feet of new space with vintage G.I. Joes, and it's going to look beautiful. And my 25th anniversary collection looks better than it ever has, because I got these risers, and I can't remember if I've mentioned these before or not, but even if I have, it's worth mentioning again, from the Container Store. They have they're white plastic risers, and they can end up being any color you want, because obviously you can just spray paint the things. But they're 3 tiers. They expand out to, I'd say about 18 inches maybe. Let's see. Maybe more than that. It might be about 20 inches, but they collapse down to maybe 12 or 14 inches. And they're fantastic. They're very sturdy, but they're light. And they hold 3 3/4 inch figures very well, on stands very well. They hold 6 inch figures not on stands just fine. They're great, and they have leveled up the appearance of my collection, and they're they were either $8 or $10 a piece. I think they were $10 a piece, which if you have looked at the cost of risers, particularly if they're action figure oriented, which these are not, these are just shelf risers, they tend to be very expensive. And for $10, it's really wild. And if you're following Needless Things Podcast on Instagram or Audible Interlude Podcast on Instagram, then I'll put up some pictures and you can see what these things look like. But they're absolutely fantastic. They are game changers for your collection. So I highly recommend these things. Just go to the Container Store and search for, I think it's just shelf risers. And they're, like I said, they're about $10. But Container Store does coupons all the time too. I actually need to order some more of these things. And I've got I think it's a 25% off coupon they sent me. So $7.50 a piece. I'm ordering a bunch more because I'm using them in a lot of different places around the Phantom Zone. And I need to get a set to spray paint black for my new Masters of the Universe Origins shelf, which someday I assume will have more Masters of the Universe Origins figures on them if I can ever find them. All right, so that's what's been going on here. Just relaxing and doing stuff that I enjoy doing, and it's great. Today on the show, our friend Adam Toplass from Australia is returning, and we weren't quite sure what we were going to be talking about. Initially, we were going to do an episode just about current wrestling figures, and that didn't, I don't know, there didn't seem to be enough there for me to talk about, especially since there's a whole other podcast about wrestling figures that's pretty darn good. So what we ended up doing was talking about this first year of AEW. AEW Dynamite debuted on October 2nd of 2019, so it's had about a year to get its feet under it, so to speak. And in that year, I have gone from being a doubtful, less than enthusiastic watcher to a full-on fan. Excuse me, I had to get a little sip of water there. I now am all in, so to speak, on AEW. I don't love everything they do, so maybe I'm not all in. Maybe that's not the right phrase for it. But I watch every episode of Dynamite. I put my money down for the pay-per-view, which I didn't totally love, but I think I understand why, and Adam and I do talk about that throughout the course of the episode. But every episode of Dynamite keeps me entertained. It is now... NXT, I think, is still my favorite wrestling show, but Dynamite is the one I look forward to the most, if that makes any sense. Like, I don't necessarily feel like Dynamite is going to leave me as satisfied, but it's going to be more fun to watch. I don't know. Adam and I break it down quite a bit. This is a great episode if you have been watching AEW, or if you're thinking about AEW and are kind of doubting some of the things that you've seen. We talk a bit about how it's different, what they're doing that makes them stand out, and you know, some of the stuff that we maybe aren't as crazy about as well. This is a realistic conversation. So, like, if you're a super duper AEW fanboy that can't handle honest critiques, then maybe we're going to make you a little upset in a couple of places. But I think if you can appreciate some genuine criticism that's hopeful for improvement, then this is definitely the episode for you. One thing I would like to point out, we talk about tag teams at one point, and I say that I'm not a big fan of when they just slap two guys together and put the titles on them, that I very much prefer, you know, real tag teams. And I understand that sometimes the slapping the two guys together works out really well. As a matter of fact, my favorite tag team of all time, America's Most Wanted, James Storm and Chris Harris, just got slapped together by TNA and turned out to be, like I just said, my favorite tag team ever. So, you know, it works sometimes, but I don't look at... You guys know what I'm talking about. Like, the Stone Cold and Triple H, putting the titles on them is ridiculous. I don't like when the titles are being used as props and whatever's happening isn't going to get them over. It's one thing if you take two top-tier guys, put the titles on them, and then a real tag team beats them and gets the benefit of that. Like, whoa, they beat two top guys, and now they're the champions, and then they move on to elevate the entire division. That's one thing, but that's usually not how it works out. So and with AEW, to a certain extent, I think that may be what they've done. But again, Adam and I talk about that during the course of the episode. I just wanted to, I didn't specify or I didn't elaborate enough on that, so I wanted to make sure you guys understand that sometimes slapping two guys together works really well, but in most cases not. And we talk more about that over the course of the episode. So that's, intro-wise, that's really all I've got for you. I mentioned on the social media that WWE sent out a letter sometime last week saying that all of its talent needed to immediately sever their ties with any third-party entities like Twitch or YouTube. Well, I don't know about YouTube, because I think WWE has a pretty good working relationship with YouTube, but basically anywhere that these guys and gals are able to make money during these difficult times, WWE apparently sent out a letter saying, no, you're going to have to stop doing that. And that made me really angry, because I think it's important for them to have options and the ability to, when they are not on the WWE time clock, do other things, elevate their names more. And this, to me, goes back to things like Zack Ryder getting himself over, and that was not part of the plan, or Rusev being so popular, and that was not part of the plan. I think it's about control. Now, having said that, if this turns out to be worst case scenario, and WWE wants things like Xavier Woods to shut down Up, Down, Down, which seems ridiculous to me considering an action figure just came out with the Up, Down, Down championship. But, that's worst case. If that's the sort of thing they're looking for, or Alexa Bliss's newly launched podcast, or all of the YouTube channels that various superstars like Asuka have, like if they want to shut that stuff down, I'm done with WWE, because that's a degree of control they don't deserve to have over these people. But if it turns out to be something different, where they want to work more, I don't know. I don't know what the positive outcome of that is. Like, whatever the case is, I don't care for it, but WWE may have a legitimate, reasonable motivation behind this request, and if they do, then, what are you going to do? But if it really is just them wanting to control the literal images of these people, then I think that's a step too far. And I'm not one to jump the gun. I'm not the one to have fiery responses for every single thing that happens, but these people deserve creative freedom, and they deserve to be able to push themselves beyond what WWE allows on their shows week in and week out. As, spoiler alert for this week's Dynamite, as the freshly debuting Miro, formerly Rusev, said, the fake brass ring that's beyond the glass ceiling. And I am a fan of WWE. However, there is no denying that they don't give opportunities beyond what they see fit to give in most cases. So if somebody does, get themselves over organically, like Miro, it's rather than going with it, more often than not, they bury it, or they don't know what to do with it. And it's because they're a big business. They're not a wrestling business. They're an entertainment business. And I like a lot of what that means, but I also don't like some of what that means. So it's something to follow, something to keep an eye on. And I wanted to brush up on it before I started recording today, but it is so difficult to find specific stories on wrestling news websites, because they're so littered with like kayfabe news and dumb stuff like Lana updates TikTok. Like, well, yeah, I know. If you're following her, you don't need this stupid website to tell me that. Like, you either follow her because you care, or you don't care and you want actual news. So it was too difficult for me to sift through even 4 days worth of posts to try and get an update on this. But hopefully I'll have more information as things go along. And like I said, it's a corporate WWE thing. And whatever the motivation is, we'll see what the outcome ends up being. But I don't like people's creativity, and I think that's what upsets me the most about it, is I want creative people to have outlets and have the freedom to do what they want to do. And yeah, it's easy to say, well, WWE's paying them. Well, sure, but are they? And when you see things like all the releases that happened earlier this year, they are taking away these people's ability to have a backup plan, and I don't like that either. And whatever the case, we'll find out. We'll keep an eye on it. But now it is time to sit down, grab yourself a big old beverage, just like Hangman Adam Page would, and enjoy the newest episode of the Needless Things podcast, where we take a look at All Elite Wrestling. October 2nd of I was going to say 1999. It hasn't been going quite that long. October 2nd of 2019, AEW premiered on TNT, AEW Dynamite to be specific. And I just want to take a look back at this year of a brand new wrestling company. And here to do that with me, welcome back to the show, Adam. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. I'm excited. I think we're going to have a fun conversation because over the course of the next hour-ish, we're going to talk about AEW's year. We're going to talk about what they've done, what they've accomplished. Specifically, I want to get into All Out, which was the pay-per-view that came on this past Saturday. Past Saturday here. In Australia, how did it air over there? How does that stuff work for you guys?
So, funny story about the date that this was going to air is I'm actually in a Aussie figure collecting group, and we've got a bit of a local group chat going where honestly we look for like WWE figures that just come out, and if we find a big stock, we just put it in the group chat. Hey guys, Target at Brookside has got the whole set of whatever. So it's turned into a little bit of community, and I thought, well, why don't I throw an AEW pay-per-view watch party, and invited a bunch of people from there. Everyone said, yeah, this is great. And then about a week before, everybody canceled because we all realized that it was Father's Day. So
well, and that's what's been funny is I follow because this is something interesting about the wrestling world over the past few years. And I think a lot of it is we have NXT to thank for this, is there are a lot more high-profile international wrestlers than there used to be. So, which I think is a good thing, because I have more awareness of things like Father's Day in America taking place 3 months before Father's Day in most of the rest of the world. Talk about a time difference.
Yeah.
So I see stuff like, Peyton Royce and Billy Kay posting stuff about Father's Day the other day, and I was like, Father's Day? Interesting. And then I start to see it from other wrestlers from other countries, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I don't know. I think more global awareness is always a good thing.
Yeah. Well, I think social media is definitely taking care of that.
Yeah, absolutely. But we did both watch All Out, so we're going to discuss that a little bit, what went down, what we liked and what we didn't, and some of the challenges that they faced, because I think I have figured out one of the tough roads that they had to deal with. But before we get to that, let's talk a little bit about our own personal AEW fandom. Where did it start for you?
It started for me when the rumors that Jericho, Jim Ross, and Cody Rhodes were going to start a wrestling company, basically. No, so I'm somebody who's watched WWE since I was 11. I've put a lot of money into it. I've gone to all the live events, funny enough, I've been all in on WWE for a long time. And when they started announcing that there might be a legitimate competitor coming up, and there were rumors that TNT might get on board and things like that, I was excited for it, and I was following every step of the way, because I was well and truly ready for a change in my wrestling diet from what WWE was putting out at the time. So, yeah, I was on board from the moment that it was even rumored to be happening.
For me, in the early 2000s, I got into Ring of Honor and TNA right around the same time, probably like 2002, and was kind of watching the, I guess, secondary tier of wrestling, for lack of a better term, in America. And kept up with that for a few years, and then just kind of fell out. Got a new job, got married, priorities changed, and I always will follow WWE just because they're the big one. If you keep up with one, you keep up with them for the most part.
Yeah.
And kind of fell off, but then when Jericho left WWE and started having these matches in Japan with this guy Kenny Omega, who at the time I was listening to Lance Storm and Don Callis' podcast, which I think is still available. It's called Killing the Town. They don't do it anymore, but it's my favorite wrestling podcast ever. It was
that's Cyrus, isn't it? Don
yes,
Callis.
Yes, it is. That is Cyrus the Jackal. It was just absolutely amazing because you had Lance Storm, very practical, very oriented on ring work, but with a brilliant mind for. It's basically everything about the sizzle and the steak between these two guys. They get it. And Don Callis, was putting over Kenny Omega as the greatest wrestler working today. And so I was like, oh man, I'm kind of interested in this. And I watched, I think it was the second Omega Jericho match. I don't remember what the event was. I briefly had in NJPW World just so I could check out that pay-per-view. And it was really cool. But I didn't keep up with it a whole heck of a lot after that. But I did have an awareness of the Young Bucks, and I knew what Cody was up to, and this whole thing with Jericho, I saw this stuff all coming together without really understanding what it could mean.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like when they started to get more notoriety around that time that Jericho went off to New Japan. I feel like it was a very organic swell of popularity and awareness, and it was for the right reasons, and everybody was sort of starting to find out. That was around the time that I started to really pay attention to these people. I'd heard the names, but I'd never really gone out of my way to see the matches, and yeah, it's interesting that, in that 12 months or a couple of years before AEW was, founded, that there was this real big swell of awareness and popularity of these guys that were huge megastars but had just never been in WWE.
And I think, it's interesting. While WWE certainly gets a little bit of credit for Cody Rhodes having the name or the visibility that he had, and obviously Jericho has made his own way everywhere he's gone over the years, but WWE brought him to his peak of notoriety. I do think, and again, to go back to NXT, I think all of these people that had worked with Omega and the Bucks now being more visible on NXT's show, because before they put NXT on USA, it was really getting a lot of traction just as part of the network, and just in my circle of friends, it was the show. And because we liked that show, we were kind of looking a little more into the pasts of these people they were bringing up.
Yeah, it's interesting with NXT, when it was on before it was on the network, the way it airs in Australia, and I think it was like this maybe in Canada and a couple of other places, is Raw and SmackDown would air on a channel called Fox 8 on the on cable TV. And NXT would also air on Fox 8, just on a different day.
Oh, wow.
So up until it was going live on the network, or maybe when the network even came in, NXT for the first time was unavailable in Australia. So NXT is actually huge over here. We've always been able to access NXT pretty easily just from if you watch Raw and SmackDown, you could easily watch NXT as well.
And that's interesting because they did, if I'm remembering correctly, they did a couple of big tours of Australia years ago.
They did. I attended myself. It was actually probably one of my favorite live event experiences. I got to sit ringside because the tickets were half the price of a normal show. So
very cool.
I was happy.
Very cool. So just that awareness of who these people were was starting to build. And I guess when I say, I describe myself very much as sort of a mainstream fan. I don't dig into things. I'm not like, I couldn't name more than a few people working in Japan right now. I just can't keep track of everything like I used to. So I would say if you're starting a new wrestling company, I am the sort of fan you want to go after because, like, I'll digest anything that is easy for me to get. That was my whole deal with NJPW is their app was so difficult to use that it just wasn't worth my time, even though I loved the content that I saw. So what you want to do is hook those wrestling fans who are potentially loyal fans. Like, casual fans are obviously important, but who you got to hook are those guys like me and probably like you, I'm guessing, although we'll see, but that once they've got you, they're going to be loyal, and they're not going to lose me to, like, football or something.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I don't know if this is the right time to get into it, but, WWE started doing a lot of disservice toward the fans, and I think there's a lot of people out there that were, like, crying out for a good quality wrestling product that were probably, watching NXT, I guess, and things like that. But there's a big group of fans that are waiting for really good, solid storytelling to come back into wrestling because it's something that WWE just hasn't been delivering for such a long time. So, I think that's a huge group of people. It's all the lapsed fans from the Attitude Era and things like that.
Well, I think when Dynamite started on TNT, it was in what I consider to be a great time for them because WWE is very cyclical, not just throughout the years, but within a year, because you have basically from January to March, you have the build to WrestleMania and WrestleMania. Very exciting times. You get the Rumble. Everything between then and WrestleMania tends to be pretty action-packed and exciting. And then after WrestleMania, you get a little bit of a lull, but they pretty much maintain momentum up to SummerSlam. And then SummerSlam through the end of the year tends to be a pretty significant lull for WWE. Some years it's better than others. Sometimes we get a lot of effort put into Survivor Series. Last decade, probably not so much. But although I got to give credit last year's Survivor Series where the three-way brand war, wasn't that last year?
Yeah, that was when they brought NXT into
yes.
it. And it's one of those things where I watched that and I thought, this is a great idea. Why didn't we do this 5 years ago?
Right.
Is this an obvious one?
But that one was good. But overall, Survivor Series just isn't what it used to be. So it was the right, not just era-wise in that WWE is under a lot of fire right now and does seem somewhat, and look, I'm not going to sit here and shit on WWE this whole episode. I still love WWE. I still think there's a lot of great stuff in their programming, but it is creatively very homogenous. A lot of the same stories, you see the same thing over and over and over again. A lot of the matches, a lot of the talent are so similar that you could kind of just swap them in and out, which I think is to an extent by design.
It is. I actually have a theory on that. It basically is, remember how WWE was very resistant to CM Punk when he started to organically get over?
Oh, absolutely. Well, and it's happened with lots of stars. Well, Zack Ryder is another one that, obviously he didn't achieve the heights of Punk, but he got over on his own.
Yeah, but when they finally did bite the bullet and sort of get behind Punk, they there's always that kind of argument about was he even truly the top guy, but they would have paid him a ton. They would have put a ton of money into promoting him as well. And then he decided to leave because he didn't need it. So now WWE had that moment where they're like, we've been creating this huge character for the last 2 years, and now the guy's just walked out.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they're apprehensive to allow anybody to really get big on their own, because it puts leverage in the wrestler's corner. And that sounds kind of evil, corporation, but I would not be surprised at all if that's one of the things that changed how they look at who they decide to push.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, because another, along those lines, when you look back at the successes of like Hulk Hogan or The Rock, like those guys got huge and then left. And the company was, and Stone Cold, the company was built around those guys, and when they left, there was a vacuum at the top of the roster for a long time. And I think they are very hesitant to run with people now. We've seen John Cena and Roman Reigns, who are clearly identifiable top guys in the past 15 years.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, you could sprinkle in there like, Punk and Bryan or something, but they were very brief stints as well. But, that's, again, it was why WWE lost so much faith with the fans and why AEW was so welcome, I think, is because everybody's like, oh, thank God, now I can finally see a good mid-card feud or a good, something that I can actually get into.
Well, and that's what, and I hate to compare AEW to WCW too terribly much, but they do invite those comparisons. But my favorite era of wrestling from the time that I've been watching is the 96 to 99 WCW, and it's for exactly what you just said. And WWF was the same way at the time. Those mid-card feuds, those characters who weren't the main eventers, their stories got just as much attention as the main event stories. Like, you could kind of tune in at any point during the show, and there was something engaging going on that felt like it mattered to these characters.
Yeah, and I think that's something that even Lucha Underground did fantastically as well, which it was probably more due to time constraints, but when I would watch Lucha Underground every week, you don't know what the main event was going to be. It wasn't always Prince Puma versus Johnny Mundo in some kind of match with other people. It was, there was a whole episode of that show that was just Pentagon against the triad of Japanese female wrestlers in like a gauntlet match. Like, I'm all in when wrestling companies spend significant amounts of time to get something over that isn't already the focal point of what they're trying to do.
Yes.
And that's what AEW does really well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And before we get too deep into how AEW does that, let's go back to the beginning there and talk a little bit about Dynamite and when it hit and what our impressions were at first. Because I'll tell you right now, for me, I was very excited. I was dubious because, my gosh, really, you're starting a whole new wrestling company that, the word competition is funny. When I say compete with WWE, I don't mean eventually overtake and destroy WWE. I mean be a financially and entertainment-wise viable alternative to WWE programming.
Yes.
And even that seemed like a really wild concept to me, but I wanted it to work because I have missed competing wrestling for 20 years now, just like everybody else has.
Yeah, and I think the alternatives that have come up since WCW went out of business, TNA's had ebbs and flows, Ring of Honor has had, again, ebbs and flows, but none of them have ever really felt like this internationally available, like, kind of worldwide product that could, genuinely have some sort of a swell of momentum against, the corporate giant. And there was something about when AEW came out, it seemed like there was a lot of learning from mistakes.
Yes.
They had a great person backing it with Tony Khan. They had, Cody Rhodes has obviously got wrestling in his blood. He's lived it since he was a kid. Chris Jericho has done a lot more ahead of his time stuff than anybody else probably has for the last 10 years or so. And Jim Ross as well, which I think Jim Ross really wants to stick it up WWE's ass. So
it seems like he does, right?
Oh, 100%. And sometimes it gets a little bit like, oh, come on, JR, you don't have to be like that. But other times I hear what he says and I'm like, yeah, good. I'm glad somebody's finally speaking up and saying that this is what happened and that it was completely unnecessary.
Yeah, it's been, well, they had that core that was untested, but in theory seemed very, very solid. The financial backer is there. The guy with the mind for the business is there. The guy who in Jericho who has literally done it all is there. It really, in hindsight, it does seem like a formula that can't fail. But at the time, it seemed like, wow, these guys may be overreaching a little bit. But as it turns out, here a year later, they're not. And
that's why I think that the AEW has got the faith of the fans. Is from the moment that they announced what they were going to do, they've really followed through on all promises. Like they've legitimately become like they got the TV deal. They've been having more interesting matches. They've stuck to a degree to the ranking system and stuff like that. Like they've done a lot that the fans are grateful, and I think the fans are willing to give them, even if they do something that's not the best, the fans are happy to say, okay, well, that's 1 thing out of 10 on this show that I didn't really like. The other 9 things were all awesome that I really got into. So, they've followed through on their promises, and that's what WWE doesn't seem to do, which, when you've got a new company that's got a track record of not having these epic, failures that they need to like cover and move on from, a lot of people are more inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt on, medium things as well.
Well, and that's a very important thing there. One, that when I watch when I sit down and watch 2 hours of Dynamite, I don't love everything that I see, and not everything in front of me is wrestling the way that I want it. However, 90% of it is entertaining. Even when I'm watching a match that isn't completely wrestling the way I like, because for me, for my personal taste, and I want to make it clear here for the listeners, I am a wrestling fan. I am not a wrestling expert. I just know what I like, and I've liked stuff the way I like it for a very long time now. So I'm not saying anything is wrong. I'm just talking about my personal taste. Some of their tag matches, they're like too much. There's too much. Like some of the double team moves I see, I'm like, wow, that was really amazing. And then I'm like, yeah, but it doesn't look like they're fighting at all anymore. But it's entertaining. It's like, wow, I don't care for the way they did that, but it impresses the shit out of me that they did that.
Yeah, and to me, that's a way of expanding to a wider audience because,
for sure,
for example, I could be sitting there watching AEW and there's a very minor comment that Jim Ross makes that is very poignant to me or an inside joke that makes me laugh and makes me enjoy it. Meanwhile, I've got the missus walking around behind me as Ray Phoenix does a double somersault, Canadian destroyer, and she stops and looks and goes, "Whoa, what was going on there? That was pretty crazy." So, I get the high spots. Maybe they're a bit overused, but it's the thing that I think everybody on that roster basically grew up on at this point. So it feels like it might just be the next step.
It is, and it absolutely is, and that's. I have a very similar experience. My wife hasn't watched wrestling with me in years, aside from the occasional, like with NXT a little bit, she started to sit down and watch again. But AEW, like she actually makes a point of she will sit down and watch the show. And something like Abaddon will catch her eye, although I got to say Abaddon probably catches everybody's eye.
Abaddon needs to catch her own eye before it falls out of her head.
She is awesome, and I hope they do everything they can to protect that gimmick because she's great. But like stuff like that, there is something, like you said, the high spots are there, and when they're not doing high spots, they're doing really solid, exciting wrestling. So, like, if you, it's like the old thing, it's a 3-ring circus. If you don't like the bears in the first ring, well, look, the clowns are in the second ring. Oh, and look, the strongman's in the third ring. Like, it really is like that, where they're mixing things up so successfully. And as we have seen, AEW is not afraid to course correct when something doesn't seem to be working. And I think that's a very important distinction between them and WWE.
Yeah, 100%. I think you might be referring to Britt Baker there with that analogy. And it makes sense. It does make sense. They were trying to make her be the female John Cena for AEW. The fans weren't having it. They changed her heel. Now she's amazing. And by the way, that I don't know when you want to do the review of All Out, but the tooth and nail match, I didn't know that was going to be in a dentist office. I somehow missed that fact. I didn't know. I'm like, tooth and nail match? Well, I don't even know what that is. All right, well, let's see, kind of thing.
Yeah, that took me by surprise too. But we'll get to that in a minute. I want to cover Dynamite just a little bit more before we get to All Out. And talk about some of the personalities. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, just because we were talking about the start of AEW, I think the wrestling fans will definitely empathize with this. Around the month that AEW Dynamite debuted on TV, what was happening in WWE was we got The Fiend kicking out of 19 curb stomps and then getting DQ'd in a Hell in a Cell for using a mallet. And then we had The Fiend lose to Goldberg in 30 seconds within a month after that. So WWE could not have had worse timing to do those things, because both of those individual matches, not that I'm like some, super mark for The Fiend or anything like that, but both of those matches were huge, huge mistakes to the way that they played them out. And while you've got these absolute historic level train wrecks happening over in WWE, you've got AEW with a whole fresh canvas, new interesting people, getting people over, having tournaments and good matches and people you haven't seen for a long time. And it was if put this way, I don't know if Dynamite would have been as successful as it was if WWE wasn't shitting the bed completely at the exact same time. It's uncanny how one side was coming up and the other side was like spiraling creatively at the time.
I'm going to agree with you there. We actually went to Starrcade, which was a live event. They showed some of it on the network, but not all of it. But they held it here in Atlanta, and I witnessed and this is including independent shows that I've been to. This is including shows that I've hosted where they had Invisible Man matches. Kid you not.
Really? At the Starrcade live event?
The worst match I've ever seen in my life live at Starrcade. Worse than an Invisible Man match. It was The Fiend versus Braun Strowman in a cage. And they kind of halfway threw each other around for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And then The Fiend threw Strowman into the side of the cage. Strowman fell down, and The Fiend walked out of the cage, and that was it. I don't know. All we could figure out was that they must have run out of time or something. I still am baffled by...
Did that air on the network, that
I
match?
Don't think I don't think they aired that, or if they did, they cut it in such a way that it looked completely different from what we saw. I don't remember exactly, but if any of the listeners want to go check it out, it's Starrcade 2019. I believe it's still on the network. And it was, and also the opening match was Seth Rollins versus Eric Rowan, and they just shit the bed too, which shocked me. But wow. I don't know why Rollins was opening that, but just not exactly enhancing the legacy of Starrcade. I believe the main event was Kevin Owens interviewing Ric Flair.
Okay.
It was a wreck.
Flair end up bleeding, or...
What was that?
Did Ric Flair end up bleeding or not?
No, they literally just sat there and did an interview.
Okay, I feel like it's not a Ric Flair appearance unless his hair is pink with smeared blood through it. So
it was unbelievable. So you're right. WWE was definitely in a bad place when Dynamite launched.
I was going to say, from the perspective over here, we obviously don't get TNT as a network. So I watch Dynamite on the Fight TV app, and for any international viewers, if you can't get access to TNT, I don't know if Americans can access it from where they are because it actually airs on television where you are, but the Fight app is amazing. We get to hear the craziest things between commercial breaks coming from Jim Ross on commentary.
Oh, wow.
It's a whole different thing. Like if somebody was like reviewing Dynamite, I would say to them, I don't know if you can use like a VPN or something, or what do they call it? A IP bouncer thing.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
To Fight TV.
Yeah.
We were watching last week, and was it Joey Janela was in the ring cutting a promo during the commercial break on whoever he was facing. I think it was John Moxley. And he's in there, he's strutting around the ring, like, playing to the fans that were there. And you just hear Jim Ross say into the commentary thing, "Man, Janela should be a heel. He walks like a heel."
That's awesome. Oh, my gosh.
It doesn't happen all the time, but every now and then something sneaks through because they think they're at commercial and not on Fight TV at the time, and it's fantastic.
Oh,
on top of that, it's a super reliable, easy to use, very cheap subscription. I think it cost me like $1 a week to watch AEW.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I need to look into that because I'm considering dropping our YouTube TV right now. We don't have cable at all. We just stream everything. But I would have to have a way to watch Dynamite if I did that. And I've used Fight for pay-per-views before. I used it to watch the last Impact pay-per-view. And the AEW, oh gosh, what was the one before this one? I don't know. But anyway, yeah, Fight is a great app. It's fantastic.
Yeah, so the good thing about that is I can also watch it live if I'm home at 10 o'clock on a Thursday morning, and if not, I can watch it on demand straight away. So as far as it being accessible to me over here, it's a lot more accessible than WWE is, because WWE is just on cable TV. I need to have a cable TV subscription if I want to watch it, and it's a lot more expensive than $5 a month. So
yeah. So I like I said, I was excited. I wanted to see what Dynamite was going to offer. I tuned into the first episode, and then shortly after that, I think is when we actually did drop cable. So for a little while, I didn't have a way to watch Dynamite, and then we picked up a streaming service that carried it, and I checked back in for a couple weeks in a row, and it at the time, I would have told you it wasn't my cup of tea.
Right.
It just seemed, I don't know, I can't put my finger on why it didn't click for me, but it didn't. But then a few months ago, I decided it was time to check it out again. I think it was right around the time Brody Lee showed up.
Yep.
I decided, you know what, there's so many people there I like. I really want this thing to work. I want it to be great. Let me check back in. And I think at that point we knew the figures were coming as well, which was a huge deal.
Yeah.
So, because, I mean, that's one of the things, and this goes back to WWE, it's kind of hard to get behind things now because you don't know how long they're going to last and how well they're going to be treated. With WWE, it's hard to get behind any one talent because you never know when they're just going to disappear off TV. And with AEW, it didn't seem too important to me to get invested because I just wasn't sure what the permanence was going to be. But then TNT signed them to, I think, the 3-year extension. They got the action figure deal. Things were clicking into place where it really seemed like, man, this is serious. I want to be part of this again. I want to get back into it. And whatever the first one I tuned in on, it did click for me that time, and I saw the value, I saw the excitement. I got it. I got it. And since then, I've been watching every single week. This past weekend, I dropped $50 freaking on their pay-per-view because I had to see it. I'm engaged and I'm invested because, like I said, I don't love everything I see, but everything I see entertains me anytime I'm watching.
I find when I go into their pay-per-views, I usually go in really, really excited for maybe 3 or sometimes 4 matches. But all the other matches that are on the show, usually with the exception of maybe one a show, I'm still like, oh, great, yeah, okay, yeah, Scorpio Sky is going to have a match against such and such. Okay, this should be good. Like, there's no bathroom break matches, not no bathroom break matches, and I think you might have something to say about that topic there. But they're not without flaws, but it's very rarely a show that something comes on and it's an immediate kind of eye roll, like, oh, okay, all right, well, now I should probably go and get my washing out of the machine or like go and do something and come back.
Yeah, I'm sitting here scrolling through the roster. I've got it pulled up on AllEliteWrestling.com, and I can't believe the number of people I'm looking at that I'm like, man, I love this guy. Like, I had no idea who Darby Allin was. And now he's one of my favorite wrestlers. Like, he's one of the guys who I will stop whatever I'm doing and watch when I hear that music. And I love that his theme music is this, like, sort of goth emo, slow,
grungy kind of thing.
It feels right. They didn't give him some generic like metal or punk song. Like, it's something different and interesting. And when he comes to the ring, it commands your attention. They've got Colt. They just signed Eddie Kingston, who is one of the best talkers in the history of the business.
Agree.
Jungle Lucha Express. I love Lucha Express. Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, who's got to have a figure coming soon.
That's it. The interesting thing is, I feel like a lot of these guys are very hungry to perform in the business. That this is their opportunity. Like, I feel like it would be different if the day one roster was like David Otunga and Michael Tarver and Wade Barrett and just all these guys that have had their chance and now they're just kind of looking to further their career. Like, you've got these young guys that are looking to like make their career, and they're busting their ass on it as well. It's noticeable. You can tell like the effort and the excitement that these guys put into it compared to the competitors. There's no real comparison on who seems to be more passionate about what they're doing, and that translates big time.
They guys like Sammy Guevara and Adam Page, when you see them, you see the fire in their eyes, like, for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then there's 100%. Orange Cassidy, who I hated at first. I was full cornet on that guy at first. But then this feud that he's had with the Inner Circle and with Jericho, and also his relationship with the Best Friends has gotten him over a lot, because I already liked Trent and Chuck. Like, I was already a fan of those guys. So, but now, again, it just took a while for it to click with me, for that gimmick, for me to get it, Yeah,
it's weird. I'm not sure what was going on in the world at the time, but this exact same thing happened with me and Walter as well before he showed up in NXT. But I basically got on the Orange Cassidy train about 2 weeks before they announced that he was signing with AEW.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how this happened, because it would have just randomly popped up in my YouTube feed, I would imagine. So maybe he was just a buzzword and was trending and things just kind of suggested it. But I watched 3 or 4 of his indie matches on YouTube with the missus, and she was an instant super crazy fan. He is her boy as far as she's concerned. Everything he does, she's 100% on board with. She thinks he's like a sloth, which apparently is an adorable thing to her. So Orange Cassidy's been a big deal at our house for a couple of weeks before he actually got signed. So another one that when the signing was announced, it was like screenshot, send it to the missus. Oh my God, can you see what's happening here? So yeah, no, I'm 100% on board with that. But I also, not that some people take wrestling too seriously. I love comedy of any kind. So comedy wrestling, I'm 100%, as long as it's not mocking the whole concept of wrestling too much, which I guess is exactly what Orange Cassidy is doing. But it's done in a way that's undeniable, so it's okay for me.
Well, and watching him work, you would have to be a fool to not recognize the skill it takes for him to do what he does.
Yeah, he's still working the crowd
Yes.
as much as anybody who's going 1,000 miles an hour. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And I think as far as the comedy wrestling goes, for me, it's been a matter of adjusting to it being mixed in a little more with so-called serious stuff.
Yeah.
Because I love stuff like Kaiju Big Battle or Chikara or, whatever. But I don't know. There's AEW has its own tone where those worlds can coexist with more straightforward wrestling, like, well, supposedly in theory what WWE does. I mean, obviously they have ridiculous stuff going on over there too, but I think in general it's more, a little more straightforward than some of the more exotic promotions, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess what AEW does that really helps that is they treat their comedy angles or their comedy characters or whatever, they treat them seriously. They treat them like it's not some sort of tongue-in-cheek, like, oh, look at this guy. Like, they actually really, like, sincerely talk about it. Like, the best friends gimmick. Like, I hadn't seen much of Chuck and Trent before AEW, and that's a really weird gimmick to try and get over.
Yes, it is.
Like, that could very easily go one way or the other. Like, I feel like in WWE's hands, like, they would be like the B team, but worse. But you put them in AEW, and you've got Trent hitting spears on the outside, and Chuck throwing his weight around, and they're winning matches, and they're having these epic battles. There's no reason why comedy wrestlers like that can't have competitive matches and be, a threat to championships and things like that. And that's something that, to me, has always been obvious, but for such a long time, comedy wrestlers have been treated as just comedy wrestlers and then exist in, like, a bit of a bubble where they can't really, ever break out of that niche. But AEW hasn't even created that bubble or set that niche to start with. They are allowing people to be hilarious and goofy and, have a fun time, but then they're allowing them to kick people's asses as well.
Yeah, and it's very interesting. If you had told me that we would be getting a mix of Lucha Underground, of WWE, of Chikara, I would have been
Japan,
like, yeah, I would have been like, it's not going to work, but it does. They're making it work. It's a work in progress, but it is working.
So what is it about AEW that you've struggled with so far? What's sort of been the down point or the criticisms that you have so far?
Honestly, the biggest issue that I've got, and I don't want to dwell on it too much because they're working on it. You can tell they're trying different things, but I have not seen a lot from their women's division that I've enjoyed. Abaddon's awesome. Great gimmick. Ring work is what it needs to be for that kind of character, but I just don't feel like they have a leader in the women's division that can keep them competitive in that way.
Yeah, I agree. I guess Britt Baker is maybe not the division needs a face, but as far as like the highest prospect, I feel like maybe Britt Baker is up there.
I think she's the most over for sure.
So yeah, because I'm trying to think now who would really be the locker room leader for the women. Like but I'm also trying to go back to remembering what the women's roster was like before COVID happened.
Yeah,
because they had what's her name, Chris Statlander was in there as well. I think there's a couple of other people that we haven't seen since all the lockdowns and everything started happening and travel restrictions. So I'm interested to see, but you're right, they're not exactly setting the world on fire with the women's division and the matches that they're having. Even with Thunder Rosa, I'm not gonna lie, I skipped through most of that match because again, I've watched a handful of her matches and nothing really jumps out at me as really grabbing me and pulling me in.
Well, and they had, Wednesday night, they had this exhibition match between Thunder Rosa and, oh gosh, her name just fell right out of my head.
Penelope Ford or?
No, from Straight Edge Society.
Yes, Serena Deeb.
Yes, and it was probably the best women's match I've seen in AEW because Thunder Rosa is excellent. Serena Deeb, obviously, at this point, is a well-seasoned veteran that they would be very smart to sign. Awesome match that we were engaged in the whole time. And I know I was already a fan of Thunder Rosa because I was very big into the NWA YouTube show while it lasted. So
yeah, I've got that one stockpiled ready to watch, by the way.
It's so much fun. It's so good. And it goes down easy. It's an hour. So it's, they jump around a lot. It's a very different experience if you're watching a show, but it definitely is worth your time.
Yeah, but I didn't. I think I watched that up until Thunder Rosa debuted, and then I just kind of fell off of it. So, So, do you think she's somebody who could be? I don't know what her career stat, how old she is, and things like that. But is she a locker room leader, or
I don't know?
Is there something else that you think would be in that role?
I think she's somebody that now, I mean, she holds the NWA Women's Championship. She still technically works for Billy Corgan. But I do think she's somebody that AEW could build their division around if things worked out right. But they've also got Ivelisse and, oh gosh, I can't remember her name either, from Lucha Underground. They're not officially part of the roster. They've just been working shows.
Yeah, they won the women's tag team tournament, I believe.
Yes, that's correct.
And I can't remember. It's another Spanishy sounding name. But
yeah, I wasn't as familiar with her.
Yeah, it's I'm wondering if they need a female veteran there to not necessarily win belts and win matches and be all over TV, but just somebody there who can help them, help the ladies really, really harness what they can do and start, having some really memorable matches and things like that. I'm wondering if it's just a case of we've got these fantastic athletes, but there's something missing from the, pomp and circumstance side of their character. There needs to be more to get into. With that being said, Big Swole, I've been really impressed with the last couple of weeks.
Well, what's funny is the most I've seen out of, aside, because she's been really great doing the segments and stuff and like attacking Britt Baker, but I've seen very little of her actually wrestling. And to me, just from what I've seen of the women's division, they don't have enough, I'm trying to think of the nicest way I can put this, enough truly seasoned, experienced athletes to consistently put on good matches. Because in general, if you have one individual who's good in the ring, the other one is not as seasoned, is the nice way that I'm going to say it. So you get a match that, you have one person who clearly has the timing, has the aggression, has the skill, and then another person who, honestly, to me, looks like they're learning how to wrestle on TV in front of the world.
Yeah, you're right. They need a bit of a more of a consistent thing. I'm hoping that once the travel restrictions are finished, that we're going to see not just some of the the better female wrestlers that they've had in the past come back, but on top of that, get some new talent in there as well. I'd love to see what's her name, Pirate Princess Kairi Sane. I'd like to see her show up in AEW just because I really enjoy her matches, and anything with her attached to it, I think is going to have a bit of a boost in popularity and importance just because of who she is and how good people know she is.
Yeah, I would love to see that, and I think that's what they need is some names. Like I said, just seasoned veterans. And
of course,
it's
Nyla
something.
Rose as well.
Yes, Nyla Rose. You've got to have that sort of big attraction. You know, they had Awesome Kong, but she's mostly an actor now. I do think she's somebody that would be good to have in the locker room. I think she's got a lot of good insight, probably, because, she's been in the business for a long time now. But you've got Nyla Rose, who is that sort of that mountain, that prop that people can bounce off of. They've just got to figure out how to use her right.
Yeah, I think Awesome Kong also has, I don't know if it's a new injury, but I think her body is just very, very beat up. Or I could be getting it mixed up with the Welfare Queen. I'm not going to...
Which, for the listeners, if you have not watched Glow on Netflix, you're out of your mind.
Yes, please. Please watch Glow before you reply to that comment.
No, Kong is... it's unbelievable, because I saw her when she debuted in TNA and was just this monster, and now seeing her as this absolutely amazing actor is so cool. It's really... I love it.
You know what I would pay to see is Awesome Kong to return, but with her original manager from TNA, which I guess you could really just put anybody underneath that costume. It was I can't remember her name, but she had like the coverall, like I don't even know what the word is. I can't even remember the word, like the Middle Eastern kind of clothing.
Oh my gosh, I had forgotten all about that. And yeah, you could absolutely throw anybody under that. I can't remember I don't even know if they expanded on that character a whole lot.
I think it was somebody that was already on the roster, and they just
for sure.
The two characters. They were like, "Oh, you can also be this like masked character over here," as was the style at the time with TNA, of course.
Yeah, it was probably like Mickey James or something, or excuse me, Alexis Lurie at the time.
Yeah, but I think that's something that visually, if Awesome Kong came out, even just for like one match, and she had that original manager character with her, I think people would pop for that. I think that'd be a good way. But again, it's not a long-term solution. So,
well, I think to go back to Abaddon for a second, if I was booking that show, Abaddon would be brought out to the ring in like a crate. And like somebody would wheel her out and tip the crate over, and she would just run out. Did you watch Game of Thrones at all?
Yeah.
Did you stick with it the whole way through? So the White Walker that came out of the crate when they had the big meeting to prove to Cersei that the White Walkers were a real thing?
Yes.
That would be Abaddon's entrance.
I would love it if the guy who wheels her out then flees to the back as soon as he like.
Sure, yeah. He just runs away. It's some indie guy that they've got in like a little, suit or whatever, a protective suit, and he just tips it over and runs backstage for sure. I would love that. I think that'd be great for that character.
And so one thing I just want to quickly point out: this conversation we've been talking for however long it is. We've been gushing over AEW, but we have barely even spoken about any of their main event talent.
I know. I think it's because it's
so much. Yeah.
You don't even really need to. Obviously, Jericho is going to be doing his thing, and his thing now is very different than anything else that's ever been. And I do want to clarify something. I have online in various formats spoken about how beefy Jericho is right now. I want to make it absolutely clear that this is a guy who has changed his image so many times in the decades that he's been working that looks how he's a professional athlete. He looks the way he looks because that's how he wants to look. And I think it's a choice to go with that character. So I'm not, when I talk about him being a little tubby, that's not, it's the same way if I called King Kong Bundy fat. I'm not denigrating the guy. It's his freaking gimmick. Like,
yeah,
so
yeah, he's getting up there now. He's and the funny thing is, I don't know if he's doing this on purpose, but I feel like his hair lately looks absolutely horrid. Like it looks so bad. And I'm wondering if that's all a part of the thing. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna try and not make myself look like a conventional anything. I'm just gonna go with this really, I don't know, this character that's really not disheveled or anything like that, but that truly doesn't care.
Well, I think he's trying to look like mid-'80s Ozzy Osbourne. I really think when the top of the heap rock star days are over, he's wearing the spandex out onto the stage with his gut hanging over the top, his hair's all jacked up. Like, I really do think that's what he's going for, is like the veteran rocker who's still showing up. But I don't know. I think it's all part of the gimmick. Look, Jericho's a smart guy, and he's made a lot of money. There's nothing he's doing by accident. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he's also a 50-year-old man with a lot of stuff going on. So
yeah, but he's maintained this long. I think this is all the gimmick. But speaking of gimmicks, I want to talk a little bit. We're not going to spend too much time on it because we've almost already hit an hour here, and we've still got to talk about the fact that this barely a year-old company, I guess they're older. Technically, the company itself is more than a year old, but they've already got action figures on the shelf, which is wild. And we're going to talk about those figures a little bit. But just real quick, I want to talk about All Out. And you had already mentioned the tooth and nail match that they opened with.
Yes.
I didn't know that was going to be that kind of match either, and I think it was the best choice because it was something very different. It caught my attention. I didn't necessarily love it, but again, I was entertained with it, and I had fun with it.
Yeah, I think that match, even though Big Swole got the win, I think that match was obviously a lot more to develop more of a character for Britt Baker. They've kind of gone the heel route, but they've made her like a little bit of a comedy heel in a way, like kind of Kurt Angle heel in the early 2000s. Like she's a threat, but she also has these ridiculous views of herself, the role model thing, and doing all this kind of biz. So I think it was really a way to get get Britt Baker over even more by not even having her win the match. And hey, I think it worked because the evil dentist thing, and she's stalking her through the dentist office. That's original, and I loved it.
Yeah, it was, and it really, I mean, it got them both over because Big Swole got the win, but Britt Baker got all the character work.
Yeah, and the syringe in the leg. I feel like we would be remiss for not mentioning that.
Yeah, that was brutal. Oh my gosh.
Look.
We got a tag match.
I love that match.
We got a tag match with the Bucks versus Jurassic Express. That was I have not been a fan of the Young Bucks until recently. That whole 50 finishers, 20 super kicks, so much flippy floppy. It's just not my preferred type of wrestling, and there's nothing wrong with it. Many people love it, and as you said, it seems to be at least a portion of the future of the business. But lately, the Bucks have developed, particularly over the last few weeks, since all the problems have been going on with Adam Page, they have gotten a little meaner and a little grittier, and they have changed their style to reflect that, and I've really been enjoying their work, and it's made me realize that two guys who can change what they do to that subtle a degree truly are as good as people say they are.
Yeah, and I think the reason that they had the storyline where they're trying to show more edge and show a little bit more, ferocity, that is, I have a weird feeling that someone's going to turn heel within the Elite, and I think AEW is deliberately putting red herrings out there for every single member of that group.
Yes. To
sort of build to whoever it is that's going to turn. Because at this point, it would make sense for the Young Bucks to turn. It would make sense for Kenny to turn. It would make sense for Hangman to turn. At this point, just by process of elimination, it'd always make sense for Cody to turn on them, just because he's the only one who's not acting like a crazy man. So
but also he was acting crazy because he's going out there and having these brutal matches every single week for that title, and then he just got killed probably because he's so exhausted. Jim Ross has been subtly telling this, going back to the word subtle, but it's weird. For as over-the-top and wacky as some stuff in AEW is, a lot of their storytelling is very low-key and takes its time, and Jim Ross has been laying a foundation for week after week. Cody keeps coming out there accepting these challenges from just anybody. It's got to take its toll. Like, he's been dropping things like that, and I feel like it's been building to something, and he just got killed by Brody Lee. Wasn't even on their big pay-per-view. They only have 4 a year. He wasn't even on the pay-per-view. Like, I'm very interested to see Wednesday night where they go with this, or if they maybe put it off a little longer, because I tell you, there's some good slow burn stuff going on here. Like you said, with the Elite, they clearly have a plan.
Yeah, and with the Bucks versus Jurassic Express, I love Jurassic Express. I don't want to fail to give them praise as well. I'm 100% on board with Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus and Marco at times as well, I guess. Little Marco.
He's great when he's just being a little prop.
Exactly. Yeah, he has a use, and if they stick to that use, then he's going to be probably a very valuable member of the roster when it comes to getting sympathy for or getting heat on the villains. But that match was fantastic, and it's all just to build this Young Bucks turn, or a red herring for a Young Bucks turn, just to see how that all goes. But no, I love that match.
Next up, we had the Casino Battle Royal, which was needlessly confusing to me as far as the rules, but it didn't matter because basically it was still just a battle royal.
Yeah, I'm down with the Casino Battle Royal. I like the idea of it's a deck of cards and everybody pulls a suit and there's a Joker card, and I'm all on board for the concept of bringing 5 people in all at once. Yeah, I enjoyed it. I loved it.
Yeah, it was It is a cool idea, and I like that they theme things in that way. I have to say, though, I felt so bad for... I've liked Matt Sydal for a long, long time, and for him to blow his first spot in AEW was tragic.
I don't know if you noticed it, but after he missed the move... I think it's Kazarian comes up, like the old veteran Kazarian. He comes up and picks him up off the ground, and he's like, "Come on, let's get you going again."
Yeah, he was hanging on to him, throwing really weak punches while clearly talking to him. But it was great because it totally covered, and it gave the opportunity, for Sydal to get back on his feet and have a great run for the rest of the match.
Yes, I always enjoyed Evan Bourne's work in WWE or whatever it was at the time, and I hope Matt Sydal gets to stick around, and I'm positive that nobody is going to look at that and say, "Well, this guy's clearly dangerous," because he's got too much of a resume. Yeah.
Well, if you remember, in one of Punk's earliest main roster matches, he went up for that springboard clothesline, and the same thing happened. There was sweat on the rope, and he just went down like a ton of bricks.
He's lucky he didn't break his neck, though, to be honest. That's not the kind of move you want to slip on.
No, not at all. But yeah, it didn't seem to hurt Punk's career too terribly much, so hopefully Sydal will be able to recover just fine. Nobody's going to care. It was clearly an unfortunate circumstance and not like him being sloppy or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought it was a good match. Darby Allin took a hell of a bump in the body bag.
Dude, that was scary. Any bump where you can't see what's happening is terrifying.
But the thing is, I've known people that skateboard, and there are these weird people out there that just wipe out 24 hours a day, and they just get up and nothing happened. There's this weird breed of human that just doesn't break when those things happen. I feel like Jeff Hardy has got a bit of that DNA in him. It's a weird thing, but I like Darby, and I'm digging the fact they've got Ricky Starks in a feud with him at the moment. That was great. Ricky Starks is good.
He's really good. He was one of the standouts on the NWA show. He's a great talker. He looks great. He's very, very good in the ring. I'm thrilled that they signed him, and he's great as part of Taz's whatever his group is.
I'm not sure what they're calling it.
Yeah, I
think Taz.
Oh, is it just Team Taz? Way to be creative, guys. And then we get, well, first of all, Taz's commentary throughout this match was fantastic because he's pulling for his guys, but he's also putting everybody else over. He's very good at that, at putting his guys over, but not being like, and this guy just sucks and we're going to beat him. He's always like, yeah, you're a tough guy, but you're not going to be like, he gets the psychology.
Taz is fantastic as well. I love it.
And at the same time, they're getting Eddie Kingston over big time, making him. I was shocked he was the last one eliminated, I guess you would say, by Lance Archer, who won the match. But he's got the whole time. He's got his team that he's put together with that big wink to the camera a couple of weeks ago.
The old Bret Hart wink.
Yes. Really cool ending. And Lance Archer, I'm not totally on board with his look, but he's got the tools to be a sort of Kane-type figure where when you need somebody big and menacing, you can bring him out. You can put him over when you want, but he can also put other guys over. I think he's got the right presence and set of skills for that.
I feel like if you could take the intensity of Eddie Kingston and put it in Lance Archer, you would have like, the biggest superstar of all time. Like he doesn't have. In fact, the missus mentioned this when we were watching the pay-per-view. She said he just doesn't have intensity. Like he looks too. Her exact words were, "He looks too friendly."
He does. He does.
Like in his eyes, like has nice, kind. Like he's probably a really nice dude, and it comes across. He needs to get rid of that.
Yeah, he's got to figure out a way to put it out there a little bit more. But still, he's got, within what AEW is doing, his character has a good spot, and I think he's been doing a solid job. And of course, you've got Jake with him to help with that sort of scariness, I guess.
Yeah, Jake's been fantastic as well. Like not because he's just 100% doing everything correctly, but the way he has sort of some of the stuff he said in his promos lately has been hilarious. I don't know if it was meant to be hilarious, but it has been. Talking about busting a nut, you won't bust a nut in this ring. And this, like, what? Who's busting a nut? Where, Jake?
Well, and that's part of the fun of AEW not being scripted is, some stuff doesn't land, but some stuff is just golden.
Oh, absolutely. That's it. I guess now Archer's got Moxley in a title match, so it all went good. But the Casino Battle Royal it was probably the worst one they've had, but it wasn't by any stretch a bad match or something that didn't live up to the expectations.
Well, and that brings me to the one element that I think really was working against everybody that had to work this, and that's the fact that it was 95 degrees outside, and there were times where you could tell these people were really struggling with that. I think there were a couple of matches, the main event was one of them, where you could just tell how oppressive the heat was, and some of these guys were just at times moving in slow motion because they just didn't have a choice. You can't work that intensely. We're talking about 23 minutes Moxley and MJF were going at it. Think about doing anything for 23 minutes, let alone fake fighting somebody else in 95-degree heat in Florida. My gosh. Yeah.
It's, where I live, we get, in the summertime, it gets quite humid and, like, heavy, sticky, thick kind of air.
Yeah.
So I 100% know what that was. And, I'm not going to lie, I didn't notice this the first time, but I think if I went back, I'd probably be able to tell because that makes complete sense that they're doing this in Daly's Place. It's an outdoor open air arena, but you can't keep the humidity out in environments like that.
If you go back and watch, I think the main event and spots of this. Well, the main event's worth watching again. It's really well done, but you'll you'll see like, oh my gosh, these guys are just struggling. But we got to move on because we got to get to the figures. Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara. The story has been great. It's been wild and crazy. This match, I don't know what to say. Obviously, statements have been made. Matt Hardy's okay, but very early on in the match, got thrown, or not thrown. He and Guevara both went off the top of one of those scissor lift deals and didn't quite land on the tables, and Hardy's head visibly bounced off of the concrete.
Yeah, that bump looked very nasty, but the way the match continued on, when I was watching it, I'm looking at it thinking, I'm like, okay, that must have been planned, because there's no way that they would be throwing up the fake injury signals and letting the match continue on if it wasn't. I was like, maybe he just was confident that, yeah, I'm pretty sure I can take this bump and not, crack my head open. But yeah, what we found out after the show is that there may have been a bit of a oversight there on letting that match continue. But I mean, as far as the match goes, it's probably not even really a great deal to talk about. It was probably the worst match on the show for very understandable reasons, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I think they did the best they could, and Hardy, again, that's what comes along with being a veteran is, they sent their doctor out there. Hardy knows himself and carried on, and then it just kind of ended with Sami falling off the thing. It was there. I don't think it's going to end this feud. But yeah, let's move on. Or perhaps we should skip the next match as well. Why?
What do you mean?
The AEW Women's World Championship, currently held by Hikaru Shida, my wife came downstairs to watch with me because she likes Thunder Rosa a lot. We watched it, and Thunder Rosa, and this is, to me, as somebody who's been watching wrestling for, almost 40 years now, Thunder Rosa was doing her best to accommodate somebody who is not a seasoned wrestler, and which is a weird thing to say because apparently Sheeta's been wrestling for over a decade. I would never, ever have guessed that from the matches that I've seen her in. I know she has a big following. I know people really like her, and I got to be honest and say I don't understand it because to me she looks tentative and awkward and slow, and I don't know, maybe I just haven't seen her in the right environment. Maybe she hasn't had the right opponent, but honestly, if Thunder Rosa is not the right opponent, I don't know who is.
I'm wondering if perhaps, I'm not sure if Shida has wrestled against, if she's only wrestled in Japan up until now and maybe doesn't have a great deal of experience wrestling somebody while calling matches in English, perhaps. I'm not sure what her English is like, but
she speaks it relatively fluently.
Okay,
she's cut some promos. She has an accent, but it's not like she's better at English than Aew or Asuka or Kairi.
Yeah, it could even be something where the way she's somebody who speaks English better than like hearing it might be maybe struggles with accents or something. But yeah, it's interesting that because I agree that she does feel a little bit hesitant or tentative in a few ways where it feels like she needs to get her footing underneath her a little bit more. So I'm hoping there's a reason for that they can overcome, but. I can't really disagree with you on that match.
That makes me feel better because I feel like I've been so hard on her, and it's not like I've not. This is the first time I've publicly expressed my thoughts about her skills because I don't want to just trash somebody, but I don't get it. But I hope that she does get her feet under her. I hope she becomes a great champion, and because I want AEW's women's division to be awesome.
Yeah, same.
Next up, a very special match, 8-man tag team match, something that AEW does a lot. But in this one, we have basically Team Cody, I guess, versus the Dark Order. We love that Matt Cardona's in this match, but the thing that stood out to me, and this is another example of AEW storytelling, is the Colt Cabana story that has been going on with the Dark Order for several weeks now.
I love it.
It's been done so well.
In fact, we were talking about this story. I was explaining this story to my housemate, and I mentioned that we said the only way this story could be improved is if they had Marco Stunt in the position of Colt Cabana. Where they're shielding him from, come on, Marco, let's go over here, buddy. I'm loving this. This was because this is where Colt Cabana took the pin, and then Brody Lee yelled at him, and Colt is like, "Oh,
right," got mad at him for the first time. Yeah, because up until now, basically Brody Lee has been leading Colt Cabana to victories. It's amazing. He was like a puppy dog that got yelled at for the first time. I'm like, oh my god, what is happening? It's so good. And then of course on the other side of the match, you've got and Evil Uno is another one that's really grown on me. I didn't care for, I don't know, I didn't get it at first, but now if you watch that guy, his mannerisms are so good. The way he does the little wave, when he's getting over, when he's getting heat, he's so good with his sort of cockiness and his swagger. That guy's tremendous under that hood.
Yeah, the Dark Order is an interesting one because it started off kind of weird and lame, and then
thought it was terrible at first.
Yeah, but then they were doing the videos of that guy. He's like, "Are you a loser? Do you need to win more matches?" That whole thing, and I started to sort of get into it a bit more. But I think they've made chicken salad out of chicken shit with the Dark Order because that could have just petered off into nothingness, but they stuck with it and they actually made something out of it. So, I enjoyed that match. And the Colt storyline, I'm all in for the Dark Order now as well.
And, of course, on the other side, we've got, Matt Cardona getting his first real... I mean, he had the tag match with Cody, but he really got to shine and get some good stuff in. Scorpio Sky, who they seem to be breaking away from SCU and sort of giving him a little bit of a singles run here. I'm very curious to see what happens with that. And then Dustin and QT, who are just, the definition of seasoned veterans who are great at everything that they do. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was, it was your typical 8-man tag match. It served a purpose. It made sense. There was the fact that Matt Cardona was in there was interesting. I will say, though, I don't think his tights quite translated the way that he was expecting them to. I think they were supposed to look like an action figure, like Hinge,
I think you're right.
Said, yeah, but it ended up just looking like he was wearing, little white, Speedos over just regular purple tights.
Yeah, it was a weird look, but I did like the boots. The boots were very, very cool. I liked them.
I did dig the boots as well.
Next up, we had FTR versus Omega and Page. FTR, obviously, a great ring generals, putting on for a long time the best matches in NXT. Now in AEW, getting a chance to wrestle more. Omega and Page. Adam Page was the first guy that I wasn't familiar with that I latched onto in AEW. I like his presence. I like his character. I think maybe scale back the drunk thing a little bit, but
yeah, it's a ballsy move, I think, to do an alcoholic gimmick. But you know what? I think in a world where sometimes things are a little bit too, protected, yeah. I don't mind them doing the alcoholic gimmick. It's not like they've really. I don't think they've really characterized.
It's not like the Scott Hall thing.
Yeah, it's not like something stupid. It's just a part of his gimmick. And at the end of the day, people drink, and people are going to relate to it. So
yeah,
go for it. But yeah, it was that was an interesting match. It was probably the match I was most looking forward to going into the show. I think I maybe enjoyed Young Bucks versus Lucha Express a bit more than this one, though, to be honest. But
this one was way too long.
I think maybe that's why. I feel like I did drop out a little bit as this match went on a bit.
It went, and this was another one where I feel like the heat played a little bit of a factor, but it was almost half an hour, and
wow.
They did not do a half hour worth of wrestling. It was,
yeah.
I don't know. All those guys can have great matches, and this, it wasn't bad by any means, but I wouldn't consider it a great match. But I do like that they got the titles onto FTR. Omega and Page can move on to other things, and now we get to maybe really dig into a tag division here in AEW, which is exciting because I'm never a fan of the tag titles being on people who are not a tag team.
I don't mind it on occasion, but yeah, I'd much prefer to have a well-oiled tag team be the champions. But it's kind of unfortunate that this match was the story of this match at the end was Omega and Hangman, because FTR won the belts, and this is the first time they've won the tag team titles. But with that being said, it's probably more important to get that story across than to celebrate FTR, especially because they're heels. I mean, they don't need the moment. It'd be good to have the bragging moment, but I'm sure we'll get plenty of that in the weeks to come.
Oh, for sure. This one, they'll get their recognition. They'll get to move forward, and then Page and Omega, which is a story that they've been telling with FTR as part of it. But that was definitely kind of the focus of what was going on here. And that's, and again, that's kind of what happens when you have not a tag team being the champs, because if you've got two guys who are not a tag team and you put the belts on them, you're doing it for story reasons. You're not doing it to get over the tag division or to get over the belts.
Yeah, that's true. I do, if it's two main event guys, like I think we had Austin and Shawn Michaels and The Rock and Mankind, if it's two guys that in their own right could be the top guy anyway, I feel like putting them together, it creates like a super team. It's like the Mega Powers kind of thing. But I wouldn't want to see, QT Marshall and Sonny Kiss beating FTR.
Right. Yeah. Next up, we had the first ever Mimosa Mayhem match. I thought it was tons of fun. It was as ridiculous as you would expect it to be. I mean, when you bring vat of mimosa, not just one vat of mimosa, but two vats of mimosa into a wrestling match. My son actually, because my son really likes Orange Cassidy, he actually came down and watched this one with me, and we had a lot of fun watching it. It was exactly what it needed to be. It was the palate cleanser between an intense tag match and the main event.
Yeah, but one of the things that stood out to me at this match is, okay, you've got this kind of goofy gimmick match. It's a heated feud, but it's, you're not really sure how the match is going to even play out. And the first thing that happens is Orange Cassidy sprints across the ring and gets hit with a code breaker.
Yes.
I was like, okay, we're off to the races here. Here we go.
Well, and that was what was so great is Cassidy is brilliant at using his gimmick and the fans' expectations, because he opens and puts his arms up. You're like, oh, here it comes. He's putting them in the pockets. We're going to do the thing. And then he just rushes Jericho. I really want live crowds back so bad, because while I have been enjoying these shows from both brands without audiences, I think both companies have figured out ways around that limitation. But once we've got live crowds back, we're really going to see how much these guys and gals have gotten themselves over in the past few months. And I think it's going to be like we're going to have some really big new superstars.
Yeah, I would love to know who they are planning on bringing into the company once the live crowds are back.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think they can plan on bringing anyone in, because who knows when that's going to be. Is it going to be 12 months from now, or is it going to be 5 years from now?
I know. Oof.
Yeah, but I enjoyed this match front to back. Jericho and Orange Cassidy are great. I have so much admiration for Jericho. The fact that he said, hey, Orange Cassidy, this is the guy that all of my peers who I learned from and worked with earlier on in my career are saying that this guy is just the worst. Well, I'm going to go in there and do a full-on, big-time main event program with this guy and prove everybody wrong. And it just kind of shows that AEW is really putting trust and faith in its wrestlers to go and do the matches that they want to do, and trust them that match is going to be amazing. And so far, they've been. I think the strike rate's been pretty good.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Finally, we have our main event.
Yep.
Jon Moxley, the AEW World Champion, defending against MJF, the best heel currently working in wrestling, in my opinion. And I haven't seen a whole lot of MJF wrestling. I think I've only seen a few matches here and there, but his mic work is so incredibly good for what is he, like 24 years old or something?
He may not even be that old, to be honest. I think he might be a bit younger. Yeah.
Unbelievable. His self-confidence on the mic and in the ring is unbelievable for somebody that age. His sky is the limit for this guy. This match, like I said, I feel like the heat was a factor. It was good, and it's worth watching. I've watched it twice now. They do a great job. They tell a great story. The work on the arm when MJF grabs Moxley's arm when they're on the apron and goes down with it. That's sick. It was sickening the way that it hit. It was amazing.
Yeah, and the double foot stomp to the elbow as well later on in the match. That was another one that looked absolutely brutal for Moxley to take. So, no, they've done a really good job giving him some very effective, almost scary kind of offense, just so that you know that, okay, this guy's not like a professional wrestler. This guy's a killer. Like he's going to maim. He's going to break arms. He's going to, very violently attack a body part. And I think that's perfect for him. And I just want to point out the Kurt Angle tights that MJF was wearing.
Yes.
I don't know if you remember. Kurt Angle used to have the exact same design on his trunks as well. So that was a nice little throwback.
Yeah, that both guys, they're selling the way that they lay in their moves. They're both very aggressive in different ways. I really like, and I was not a huge Dean Ambrose fan. I just never, I was always waiting for this character, and we never saw him in WWE, really. We saw glimpses. But
I think we saw glimpses of it back in Florida Championship Wrestling, or OVW, I think it might have still been at the time, when he feuded with William Regal. But it's been, they've really, WWE never embraced the Jon Moxley character that he was using before he joined them. And when he left WWE, and there was a thing on Twitter that said Moxley is coming or something like that, I got actual goosebumps, because the Jon Moxley character's reputation had preceded him before WWE. I knew he was a bit of a crazy man, and AEW again, right place, right time to get this character that's a little bit kind of mythological in the wrestling world, because a lot of people had never really seen it.
Yeah, but we had heard it. I mean, from the CZW stuff to we knew how he liked to work. We just really hadn't ever seen him work that way. So I really like him as the champion. I'm glad they left the title on him. MJF has plenty of places to go without winning the belt right now, and Moxley, we're getting Moxley versus Archer, like you said. That's gonna be I feel like we might hear the word slobber knocker.
That's gonna be a lockdown, drag out slobber knocker, brother.
Main event was again. I think those guys were struggling a little bit, but very satisfying. Overall, it wasn't my favorite pay-per-view ever, but from beginning to end, I was entertained by what I saw. Yes, and I agree with that as well. There were some lulls in the show, but again, it never got to the point where it was eye-rolling or you wanted to turn it off or never change the channel or anything like that. All right, well, we have to move on now and wrap this thing up with a little toy talk, because this is the Needless Things podcast, and we do love talking about toys. And Adam and I both have sitting in front of us our AEW unrivaled action figure collections. I am currently looking at 2 different versions of Chris Jericho, a Cody, not Cody Rhodes, just Cody. You got to remember that, and the Young Bucks. And I have to say that as somebody who collects a lot of different six-ish inch scale action figures, these are next level figures, and the fact that they're the first wave blows my mind.
Yes. I think the first thing, the elephant in the room, but they're going to fix this up, is the complexion of the skin tone. They all seem a little bit washed out. Like, if there's any people that are into like painting and stuff, it feels like the red paint they haven't put enough red paint in the dye to make a proper flesh color. So instead of, it looks just a little bit pale. But I mean, I've recently started collecting the Marvel Legends figurines, and the articulation on those is basically the same as the articulation on these ones. It's all very, the joints snap into place. It's not like a smooth movement. It's like actual, like locking into different kind of positions and stuff. So as far as the actual make of the figures, they are deluxe quality figurines as far as wrestling figures go, and any other kind of figure as well. They look amazing.
Well, I got to say, for a $20 action figure, price point wise, they are competing with Marvel Legends, obviously with WWE's Elite, but these figures, the first thing that really impressed me is that the waist joint is a ball joint rather than a cut joint. So when you turn the figure, you don't have that horrible, just sliced open abdomen.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. That was one of the things I noticed as well.
But yeah, the ratcheting joints are great because you can really feel... you can get poses in and they can hold them. Like, there's no sense of whatsoever that you're going to pose these guys and they're going to kind of droop over time. And the plastic, the feel of the plastic is a higher quality than the Marvel Legends or the WWE Elite figures, I feel like.
Interesting. Let me have a quick look. Yeah, you're right. It feels more... I've got a Rey Mysterio in my hand and then Nick Jackson in the other, and Mysterio feels a lot more solid plastic, but the Nick Jackson feels like not that there's some give in it, like it's squishy, but it doesn't feel as rigidly plastic as the Rey Mysterio one. Yeah,
there's just a difference here, and I think there's some ABS, there's some PVC, but the mix to me is more successful. I don't know. I really like the feel of these figures. They're solid, but they move so well that this design is just great. I mean, it really is. And like you said, maybe the skin tone is a little light, but they've already said that that's going to be improved. And for a first wave, I mean, this is amazing. The deco, the amount of deco on like Cody is tremendous.
Yeah, are you talking about the design on the tights?
Yeah,
I assume. Yeah, no, they've done a really, really fantastic job, and obviously Brandy's matches Cody's as well. Which I picked up the entire first wave and a little bit of the bubbly, and yeah, they all look pretty fantastic. A lot of people were. Some people were complaining about the face on the Chris Jericho, but I think that was before the figure was actually released, because the ones that I'm looking at now look pretty spot on, to be honest.
Yeah, both of my Jericho faces are great, and actually I didn't even notice, because I haven't had them in proximity. My little bit of the bubbly Jericho has been on a different shelf until tonight. I didn't even realize they have different faces, because the single release has an angry face Jericho, and the bubbly has a happy face Jericho.
That's right. That's how you look after a little bit of the bubbly. That's right.
Absolutely. Now take a look at your AEW Championship Belt, because I have noticed that mine has 2 right plates.
Oh.
The plate on the left side is actually the right plate turned upside down.
What do we got here? AEW. No, mine is perfectly fine. Are you talking about the... So you got the middle plate, and then you're talking about the next plates from there.
Right, on the belt's left or on your right, if you're looking straight at it. Mine is just upside down, which I don't care. I'm sure I'm going to have a drawer full of AEW Championship belts before it's said and done, so I'm not really worried about it.
Yeah.
So
I just had a look. I had a good proper look. All of mine are the right way up. So
Okay,
I
cool.
didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah, I had noticed it online. Somebody had pointed it out. But this is solid first wave. Great figures. The Bucks, like I said, I only recently started really liking them. The reason I bought these Bucks figures, because I didn't intend to, is my wife is thoroughly amused by them and thinks that they look like Sweets, the Dr. Pepper mascot.
So that's you're into the Young Bucks figurines, is it?
Well, and especially in these costumes, in this gear, they really look like that little guy. Like the colors, the red and white specifically. So I was like, you know what? They're here. I'm just going to get them. And now I've got them. And I'm sure we're going to see other color variations on the Bucks in the future, because obviously this is kind of one of their less exciting sets of gear.
Yeah, the Elvis Presley, or maybe it's Pelvis Wesley clothing that they've got. But yeah, so have you opened yours up at this point?
Oh yeah, they're all open. I'm an opener.
Okay, so I wasn't that impressed with the Young Bucks jacket though. It looks fantastic when it's posed, but it was kind of hard to pose them once they're wearing the jacket, because it kind of twists and then it kind of pulls, and there's no back to the jacket. It's like a big flap of like with the Young Bucks thing on there. Oh, there is a back to it. Actually.
Yeah. What it is it's a jacket with the cape sewn onto it. But really the only issue I had is it's hard to tell where their articulation is, like which way the joints are turned when the jacket is on. That's the trouble I've had with posing. But if you kind of pre-pose a little bit and then slide the jacket on, you can kind of get what you want. So I'm a big fan of soft goods when they're done well, and I feel like these were done really well.
I feel they're a bit too rigid.
Well, once you move them around a little bit, they're not too bad.
I have to give it more of a try, but that's the only two that I've opened is the Young Bucks and the little bit of the bubbly. The others I've still got in box, but the Kenny Omega one, I'm a bit torn on this. I don't really think that it looks overly accurate with the hair. Mm-hmm. The attire looks great, the body looks great, the hands and all that all look great, but the hair is the only thing that the silver that they tried to put in it doesn't really translate. But I think there was also a running change on that as well.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're right. And I also think that the one that comes with the ringside exclusive one that comes with the real scale or elite scale ring, I think it might be called. I think that one is a little more accurate looks-wise, but you have to spend $100 whatever bucks on the ring to get that one, so...
Don't tempt me, because I want to do that.
Well, and I mean, again, we will 100% be getting another Kenny Omega at some point, and that's what I want to talk about a little bit right now, is we know Wave 2 is on the way before the end of the year. It's the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix, MJF, Moxley, and Dustin Rhodes. I've already got the whole set pre-ordered from Ringside, because that, to me, that's a great wave.
Yeah. That is a great wave, and put it this way, this is a little bit sad, news. We had a contact in Victoria down in Australia who had a contact at Jazzwares and was able to basically get the AEW figures at shelf price in Australia.
Oh, so wow.
$30 Australian, which I guess is $20 US.
Okay.
Figure collectors are going nuts because we're like, finally, we're not going to have to pay like $50 each figure to get the AEW ones. Yeah. Well, there's been a mix-up. They're not going to be able to. They've had problems getting Wave 1. The same place has had problems getting the new set of Elites, which they were promised, and people have pre-ordered, and they haven't been able to follow it through. So at the moment, it's a big question mark on where or how I might acquire these ones. I don't want to just buy them from ringside and then they show up in Australia because I'll just be completely overspending. So I'm on a bit of a hiatus at the moment, but I'm getting a little bit nervous because the first wave was not easy to come by, it looks like. So I might just have to bite the bullet and maybe just order them from ringside just so I can stay ahead of the curve. Because I need Penta and Rey Fenix so much.
Yeah. I was on the fence about buying the boss fight versions of them, and then they got announced for Wave 2 of AEW, and I was like, well, I'm getting those because those are $20 American, and the boss fight ones are like $45 American, I think. So, yeah, I'm not going to mess with that.
My intentions is to have a Lucha Underground shelf, so I definitely need a couple of those guys for that.
So you'll have to get a little mask to go on your Ricochet figure.
I bought the Prince Puma Velveteen Dream Battle Pack with the intentions of doing a torso swap.
Nice. We know that Orange Cassidy, Pac, and Darby Allin are in Wave 3. They haven't announced the rest of the wave yet, although I've seen people say that Shida and Joey Janela are possible, and they were signed in early 2019, so it's entirely possible that they could make it into a wave.
Wow.
I think
it's surprising.
I think it wouldn't be surprising to see Private Party. I think they're very toyetic. I think it would be some much-needed diversity in the line, because if you look, they don't have a whole lot of that. I think that's something they should focus on. I think that would be a smart pick. Do you have any speculation on what Wave 3 might be?
Yeah, so is it confirmed that it's going to be Darby Allin, Orange Cassidy, and who was the other one you said?
Pac.
And Pac, okay. Or Pac, I think we're
is
supposed
it Pac?
to say.
It is Pac.
Yeah, JR was saying, he's like, I spoke to him and he told me it's Pac, so that's what I'm going to say. So if that means, 3 more? So I wouldn't mind seeing SCU, to be honest.
Yeah, that would be great, and they've been there since the beginning, so that would make sense.
Yeah, but I think they've also shown prototypes for like Luchasaurus and stuff as well. So I'm wondering if he might need to be like the first one in a wave of his own kind of thing, because I have a feeling that figure's going to be a lot more expensive to produce than some of the other ones. But who knows? Maybe if we get a Luchasaurus, we might be fortunate enough to get a Michael Nakazawa to reduce the production costs on that wave or something like that. Because I like Nakazawa; he's my guy.
Well, it's interesting because we haven't gotten far enough into the line to see how they're going to handle things like, will it be Luchasaurus and then like 4 repaints? Will it be, we don't know what their plan is going to be yet, because all we have confirmed is Wave 2 and half of Wave 3. But yeah, I do think Luchasaurus has got to be on the fast track.
They would have to do the box a little bit differently, because I'm looking at the Chris Jericho in the box, and Jericho basically takes up from the bottom of the window all the way to the top of the window. So if they're going to have Luchasaurus and he's going to be taller than everybody else, they might have to really change how they actually package that figure in these boxes if they want him to be the same size as everybody else.
Or could they potentially be planning, because we haven't seen anything about 2-packs, we haven't seen anything about box sets. Could they potentially just do a Jurassic Express box set with Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt?
I'd be down for that as well. Or the other option could be make Luchasaurus or any of the taller guys a ringside exclusive, so that way you can have a unique packaging for him and you can make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, but I think a guy like that, you want a guy like that at retail. That's a guy that little kids are going to buy even if they don't know who he is.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing though. Yeah, next time you see one of these figures in the box, have a look at the size of the figure in comparison to the window, and then think, how are they going to do like Jake Hager and Luchasaurus and Lance Archer and those kind of guys.
Huh. Okay, yeah, I'll have to take a look at that. I hadn't even thought about that when I was opening these guys
Griff
up.
Harrison needs a bit of one too.
Interesting. Well, my speculation for fourth wave, which we know nothing about. I think they've shown scans of Santana and Ortiz, but I don't know that we've seen anything else. But my purely speculated fourth wave, being realistic, is Santana, Ortiz, Britt Baker, Scorpio Sky, Frankie Kazarian, and Sammy Guevara, and Sky and Kazarian would come with the tag titles.
Yeah. I'd be down for that one. The thing is, because like I say, they build up their mid-carders so much as well. Like, they could really put any of these guys in there, it feels like.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is it's hard to even say who seems likely and who doesn't. I mean, really, anybody seems likely. It's just going to be a matter of waiting and seeing. If I could just... What would... If you could just, right now, here's the fourth wave. Who would you slot into that? Like, who are your most wanted characters as figures?
I think Santana and Ortiz definitely need to get those guys, because I feel like the first real factions that they've had have been the Inner Circle and the Elite. And we've basically got most of the Elite. Well, yeah, Hangman's coming soon. So I'd like to see Wave 4 be Santana and Ortiz, Jake Hager, Sammy Guevara. What's that? That's 4. And then from that, Chris Statlander and I'm going to be the last one. Who's very toyetic that could also use a figure. I don't know, Chris Statlander and maybe what's his name? The guy who has Penelope Ford.
Kip Sabian. That's funny you said that.
Kip Sabian. Yes, just because I think he'd be an easy one to do. You could have him with a bunch of signs and stuff like that.
I've actually got him in my Wave 4 because what I was trying to do is get 5 guys and 1 female in my sort of, if I was going to make a wave. And my Wave 4 was Chuck and Trent, because we already know Orange is coming, so I feel like you got to get those guys out. And then Penelope Ford and Kip Sabian, because you want them in the same wave because they're together. Statlander, I think, is great and toyetic, but I think she was signed too recently to make a Wave 4, which is the only reason I didn't put her in there. But you want to get her out ASAP because she's got such a great look. Like she'll be, as a matter of fact, you could even do like chase variants of her and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, did you see the chase variant for Darby Allin?
Yes, very, very cool. I love that they're doing that stuff.
Do you understand why they made that black and white?
It's from one of the old, or is it from his promo videos? Or was it a look he actually had?
He does these vignettes that are always in black and white film. Like every other week he seems to do one. So I'm pretty sure that it's supposed to represent his vignettes, which, you know what, that's super creative and perfect for a chase. So bravo to Jazzwares for that one.
Yeah, and I love the way that they're doing the chases because they're things that I would like to have, but not things that are necessary. Like, I'd love to have the Cody with the Star Trek shirt on, but I'm not going to find one, and I'll live with it.
I'm a bit worried about because I'm not sure the chase for the WWE Elite figures. They would have to be up in the thousands at least.
Oh yeah, I think they produce way more.
Yeah, the fact that these ones there's only like 500 and things like that, they'll become huge collector items. But it also takes the wins out of your sales because they're numbering these figures. So it feels like at any given time there can only be 500 people with a complete set in the world.
But see, that's, to me, I think that's, because I've always just sort of collected what I want. I don't have the compulsion to have every single piece of every single thing. But I get people who do want that, who collect, for different reasons than I do. But it's more just because they put a number on the actual box. Right.
So you're always going to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10. Jeremy
Pedaller's the king of this rodeo, man. He knows what he's doing with this line, and it's smart. It seems like smart stuff to me.
Yeah, but that's definitely first world problems. I think the day that a chase comes out that everybody wants it, you might see some unhappy people. But hey, that's the name of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you want it, you're gonna have to spend the big bucks on it, I guess.
Yeah. So that's and probably lastly, Brandy Rhodes. Figure looks pretty good. Actually looks quite a bit like her, but like the other ones, even though she's got darker skin, it's missing the red dye from that paint. It just looks a little bit washed out and a little bit pale. Oh, that's weird. She has no. This sounds weird, but she has no like cleavage, if that makes sense. But then her collarbones are like dead flat. Oh my god, that's what she actually looks like. Okay, forget me. I'm just looking at the picture of it now. She's got weird collarbones. I never noticed that before.
I haven't seen a Brandy at all yet.
I hear you on that one.
And actually, the figures are still pretty scarce just around here at retail. I found my set. Well, no, I found a Jericho at one Walmart, and then about a week later, I found the Bucks and Cody at a different one. But I've only seen the figures a few times, and they are like they're selling. They're selling like crazy, which I think is great.
Yeah. Hopefully that means they can start producing more, and who knows, maybe they can even start producing more chases down the road as well as the sales pick up and they get a bit more steam. That'd be cool, I reckon.
I don't know if I like I said, Jeremy Padawer knows what he's doing. I feel like those chase numbers are going to stay pretty much where they are. I think it's a good call. It creates excitement. But we'll see. We'll see if there's any backlash to that. Already some people don't care for the concept, but to me, it's something that if you're into it, it's very exciting. So I don't know. We'll see how that plays out. But we got to wrap this thing up, man. Real quick.
Yeah, man.
Have you got? So you don't have the big deluxe ring. Have you got the regular ring?
No, I didn't get the regular ring either. I'm going to try and track one of those down, but no, I didn't get either of the rings, unfortunately. I do regret that. I wish I just placed the order now, knowing how difficult they're going to be to get moving forward.
I grabbed one of the just basic rings, the $20 American, and I think it's the best cheap ring I've ever owned from any wrestling toy line. It's big. Obviously it's not scaled, but it looks good with the figures. It's very sturdy. The ropes have just the right amount of spring to them. Like it's a good ring. I'm very, very happy with it. I think if anybody was wanting to make custom rings for any purpose, this is a great base to get, and just don't put the stickers on it and paint it or put different stickers, whatever you want to do. It's a really, really good wrestling ring.
Yeah, I look forward to these becoming a bit more available, or maybe becoming a bit cheaper to get, and trying to snap up a few of them because they look good. I've heard really good things about the ring as well, so it's definitely the missing piece of my puzzle.
Well, man, before we wrap it up, any final thoughts about AEW? Any speculation, anything at all you want to mention before we shut it down?
I want to go on record at this point of saying that one day MJF will be the next Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. There, I've said it. I've said it. It's out there in the world. We'll have to see if this ends up being correct or not. Probably not. But
I don't know if I feel like that's even a bold prediction. I can see
exactly.
There is absolutely a road that leads there. It's just a matter of if they'll, hit all the right speeds at the right times.
Yeah, no, I'm telling you, that's what's next on the agenda for him is Scorpion King 3.
I'm in. Let's do it.
That's it. But I can, if you don't mind, I think last time I was on, I promised to plug my YouTube channel, which I've recently started. So if you are interested in NBA 2K content, WWE content, movies, TV shows, gaming streams, anything that, overgrown children like ourselves are into, check out on YouTube, FWCI, etc. It's only been up for a few weeks, but we've been uploading daily so far. So, join us and, let us know what you think about the videos in the comments. And hopefully I get to speak to you guys again soon.
And on Instagram as well, right?
Yes, it's FWCI ETC on Instagram and FWCIE on Twitter. So it's a black green, yellow, black, green, and white logo. So have a look at that, and looking forward to speaking to you guys online.
Awesome. Adam, thanks for coming on and talking again, and we'll be talking to you then later.
Too easy, Cobber.
All right, you guys, it's time for some real talk. I have noticed in editing lately that Skype seems to be getting worse and worse about clipping, where like words and portions of words will fall out sometimes, and it sucks and it really pisses me off. But the alternative to Skype is to pay around $15 a month for a better recording solution. I do not have $15 a month to sink in. Why I do. I'm not willing to sink $15 a month into the show. I can't do it. I am open to alternatives. If any of you have any suggestions for cost-effective alternatives to take care of these problems, because I hate it. Every time I hear it, it annoys the crap out of me. But I'm already sinking a pretty decent amount of money into this show for free for you guys to enjoy. I attempted a Patreon a few years ago, and that was, we had some awesome supporters, but it didn't cover the show and the amount of work it required above and beyond what I was already doing didn't make it worthwhile. So finances are absolutely a thing when you're doing a free podcast. So what we're offering now is kind of the best we can offer, but if anybody else has any suggestions about things, I am open to them 100%. We're actually making a big change with Execute Chapter 66 in order for it to become more autonomous in its own thing that's going to be positive. So I am open to change. If anybody has any great ideas, let me know. I love you guys.
You have been listening to a Needless Things podcast. You can follow Needless Things on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at needlessthingspodcast.com. Love you. Mean it. Uh-huh.